How does the sin of avarice compare to the sin of gluttony? How does avarice corrupt our love for our neighbor? Is what St John Climacus calls non-possessiveness the opposite of avarice? Is non-possessiveness equivalent to poverty? Why do we feel so violated when others steal from us, even when it is their poverty that tempts them? Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. At the end of our talk, we'll discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint script we uploaded to SlideShare, which includes illustrations. Our sister blog includes footnotes, and both include our Amazon book links. In the Bible, the important commandments are listed many times in both their positive and negative forms. But when a negative command is immediately followed by the positive form, we know that this is an important command. Now, St. John Climacus has already mentioned detachment and non-possessiveness many times. On the 16th run, he warns us against avarice, the love of money, while on the next run he teaches us to be detached, not to love our possessions. We resume our ascent of the Ladder of Divine Ascent with step 16 on avarice and greediness. These are important rungs on the ladder. Why do we feel so violated when those close to us steal from us? Many find this an offense impossible to forgive. When a single mom who does not work steals or passes bad checks to feed their children, rarely does the store manager or owner pity them. Even if they are lazy, even if they left their husband for trivial reasons, does this justify harsh punishment that harms their children? In our church, we had a lady living in Section 8 housing visit our church who spoke bad English, and who was just not welcome. Her preteen daughter was visibly uncomfortable sitting next to her. At coffee hour, the church ladies prominently displayed the lunch offering basket and nastily told her that she needed to contribute to enjoy lunch. So I put in $10 to cover for them. Later asked the priest, "Are we like Denny's, where if you do not pay, you do not eat?" He kindly responded that she had been caught a year before rifling through the purses in the restroom, that she could only expect so much from people, that it took all his powers of persuasion to prevent his parishioners from banning her entirely. So I suppose their tolerating her presence was forgiveness of sorts. So with this story in mind, we read what St. John Climacus teaches us. Avarice or love of money is the worship of idols, the daughter of unbelief, an excuse for infirmities, a foreboder of old age, a harbinger of drought, a herald of famines. Avarice is the worst kind of drought and famine, for it is drought and famine amidst plenty. A Jewish story tells of a man who toured hell, where he saw a huge banquet hall, with long tables lined with souls, and each soul ogling the plates heaped with roast beef, sausage, breads, fruits, and pies. This sumptuous meal tormented each one, and all were starving, for they had no elbows to feed themselves. Then he toured an identical banquet hall in heaven, with long tables with plates heaped with roast beef, sausage, breads, fruits, and pies. But here the mood of these souls was joyous. Just like those souls in hell, they had no elbows. But these souls were joyous because they were feeding each other. Father Vassilios teaches us, just as gluttony is the passion that distorts our definition of need in terms of food and drink, avarice is the passion that distorts our definition of need in terms of money and luxury. And St. John Climacus teaches us, the lover of money sneers at the gospel and is a willing transgressor. He who has attained to love scatters his money, but he who says that he lives for love and for money has deceived himself. How can modern man follow this advice? Is our saint saying that we sin when we save for our retirement? Or can we simply follow C.S. Lewis's sage advice and give until it hurts? Once I remember filling up at a gas station when a happy, though destitute couple approached, asking a man filling up his expensive truck for money so they could fill her husband's prescription. He scorned them for their laziness, but I figured that at worst they had gone through a lot of trouble assembling their props, so I gave him $20. Then they immediately crossed the street to the drugstore. Perhaps their condition was temporary. I never saw them beg after that. Perhaps after filling his prescription, he slowly recovered, both physically and, as he was able to work again, financially. As Father Vassilios reminds us, many church fathers teach us that to give from our poverty is more valuable in God's eyes than to give from our abundance. Father Vassilios has several quotes from St. Basil's works on social justice, including, "Are you poor? You know someone who is even poorer. Do not shrink from giving the little you have. Do not prefer your own benefit to remedying the common distress." St. Basil also teaches us, the more you abound in wealth, the more you lack in love. Father Vassilios, in his commentary on these steps of the Ladder of Divine Ascent, quotes extensively from St. Basil the Great's homilies on social justice, including the parable of the rich man and assisting the poor during a famine. St. John Climacus warns us, the beginning of love of money is a pretext of almsgiving, and the end of it is hatred of the poor. So long as he is collecting, he is charitable, but when the money is in hand, he tightens his grip. Now, although many charities cater to the wealthy, they often prefer giving to the arts. After all, feeding the starving leaves no legacy, no buildings bearing their name. Many universities have learned this, and many will refuse the gift of buildings if they are not accompanied by a trust fund to fund their maintenance expenses. And Father Mack, who also comments on the Ladder of Divine Ascent, teaches us, the more we have, the more complicated our lives become. The simpler we can make our lives, and the more we can lower our financial obligations, and the freer we become, the fewer cares we have, and the more we can pursue God without distractions. St. John Climacus also teaches us, he who has conquered the passion of avarice has conquered care, but he who is bound by it never attains to pure prayer. I have seen how men of scant means enrich themselves by living with the poor in spirit, forgetting their first poverty. Our attitude to wealth matters. Jimmy Carter could have spent his retirement like many former presidents, living in luxury, speaking for large fees, and serving on corporate boards. Instead, he retired to his humble middle-class house in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, founding the Carter Center in Atlanta, helping the cause of peace and philanthropy across the world, and working to eradicate diseases in poor third-world countries, enlisting the help of their citizens in these endeavors. Father Vassilios quotes from St. John Chrysostom's homilies on the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, where St. John Chrysostom reminds us that it is not wealth, but the abuse of wealth that is evil. St. John Chrysostom teaches us, wealth will be good for the possessor if he does not spend it only on luxury or on strong drink and harmful pleasures. If the wealthy enjoy luxury in moderation and distribute the rest to the stomachs of the poor, then wealth is a good thing. And Father Vassilios teaches us, the more we love our neighbors ourselves, the more, in other words, we feel the needs of others as though they are our own. The less inclined we will be to consider our luxuries as more important than our neighbor's basic needs. And Father Vassilios also refers to the collection of St. John Chrysostom's homilies on Lazarus and the rich man in his footnotes. We reflect on our beloved saint's reflections on how Christians should respond to the sufferings caused by natural disasters such as earthquakes, to the debate between Leibniz and Voltaire, and also our beloved saint's reflections on reading the scriptures, preaching, and on the spiritual dangers of attending chariot races. And step 17 is on non-possessiveness or poverty. Father Mack studies steps 16 and 17 together because while avarice is the spiritual illness, non-possessiveness is the cure. As Jesus exhorts us on the Sermon on the Mount, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. And St. John Climacus teaches us, the non-possessive ascetic is a son of detachment, regarding his possessions as if they were nothing. And a non-possessive man is pure during prayer, but an acquisitive man prays to material images. Once I heard a master salesman give this advice in a sales training seminar. Attach to your mirror pictures of those items you want to possess, and imagine that in the coming months and years you will possess them. Aim for the stars. Imagine you'll be soon driving a luxury car, living in a mansion, and relaxing on your yacht. Is this perverse advice to pray without ceasing for greater wealth? Is this master salesman urging you to live for greater possessions? Will those who die with the most toys gain a favored station in heaven? And when pondering what to write about in this chapter, I noticed someone who's reading Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Or should it be subtitled, How to Manipulate Others to Like You and Bless You with Wheelbarrows Full of Money? Dale Carnegie was not related to the robber baron Andrew Carnegie, who penned his 1889 essay, The Gospel of Wealth, where he urged the ultra-wealthy to practice responsible philanthropy to benefit the lower classes. Andrew Carnegie was known for his donations to black colleges, particularly Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute. And today, Bill Gates of Microsoft fame has likewise dedicated his fortune to fighting third world diseases. Did Carnegie's generosity excuse him from paying his workers slave wages? When Carnegie Steel busted their union in the 1892 Homestead strike, Andrew Carnegie avoided blame by claiming he was no longer controlled the company bearing his name. And since God blesses those who are his faithful stewards, or so the prosperity teachers on TV will lead you to believe, the temptation is to believe the reverse. Those who are not blessed materially are not God's faithful servants. And what does the prosperity gospel preach? If you are prosperous, then God has blessed you, and vice versa. Wealth equals virtue, and virtue brings wealth, especially if you donate to the prosperity preacher. But filling our bank accounts means filling our souls with the cares of this world, with little time left to care for others, as St John Climacus warns us. He who has tasted of the blessings on high easily despises what is below. But he who has not tasted the blessings above finds joy in possessions. And the love of money is called the root of all evil, because it produces hatred, thefts, envy, separations, enmities, storms, remembrance of wrong, hard-heartedness, and murders. And he teaches us further. Waves never leave the sea, nor do anger and grief leave the avaricious. And non-possessiveness is the resignation of cares, life without anxiety, unencumbered by possessions, alienation from sorrow, fidelity to the commandments. Father Mack, who's also a commentator on this work, teaches us, as our income grows, we should give away more rather than spending more on ourselves. For us in the world, our salvation depends on our almsgiving. Although we cannot live in absolute poverty, we can live generously. Father Mack is echoing the words of the angel who, in the book of Acts, tells the first Gentile convert, Cornelius the Centurion, that your prayers and your alms have ascended as a memorial before God. John Chrysostom, in his homilies on Lazarus and the rich man, reminds us those who practice voluntary poverty are the ones who are truly rich, because they are free of need and worldly concerns. If you see someone greedy for many things, you should consider him the poorest of all, even if he has acquired everyone's money. If, on the other hand, you see someone with few needs, you should count him the richest of all, even if he has acquired nothing. Father Vassilios teaches us, voluntary poverty is a virtue because it is an expression of self-denying love. Through ascesis, we are able to live a frugal life, enabling us to give more to others. Poverty is therefore a sacrifice of the will, a surrender of our worldly desires for love of God and neighbor. Now we'll discuss the sources we use for this video. Both of the editions of the Ladder of Divine Ascent we consult use similar translation, but each has its own thoughtful introductions. The introductions in the Classic of Western Spirituality is by Bishop Callisto Zware. We find this work as easy to read as the works of the Stoic philosophers that influenced Christianity and the monastic tradition. But we also have the commentaries by Father John Mack and Father Vassilios, which are valuable because they reflect their experience as priests hearing confessions. The Ladder of Divine Ascent is a classic monastic work written by St John Climacus for his fellow monastics in the 7th century, centuries before Emperor Constantine started the transformation of the Roman Empire into a Christian empire. Since this is a manual meant for monastic monks, some common sense allegorizing is needed to apply his advice to laymen living in the world. In his first step, St. John Climacus advises laymen that living a godly life is sufficient for salvation. Laymen benefit from studying the monastic classics like the Ladder of Divine Ascent because marriage and living the Christian life is itself a type of monastic calling. St. John Climacus sees the Christian life as progressing up the Ladder of Divine Ascent, beginning with the rejection of the selfishness of the world, then the importance of obeying the Lord's commandments, and the godly injunctions of the Church and those in authority, and repentance and perseverance through the trying times of our lives. We are then reminded that we should be free from anger, not holding grudges for the wrongs we suffer, in the strength of meekness. In the next step, we combat slander, lying, and gossip, and we combat the passions of gluttony by moderate living and fasting, following a life of purity and chastity in this 15th step of the ladder. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.